Good morning, everybody. I have the pleasure of opening up day 2. Thanks, Peter and TRA, for having me. So, Patrick Jacob. I have the immense pleasure of having 2 first names, so I go by Jacob as well. I'm very used to that, no problem at all. I am based in Montreal, Canada, where there was still 2 feet of snow when I left yesterday, so it's actually nice to get some 90 degrees here. So yesterday we touched upon a whole bunch of themes. There was safety, there was greater access to rail, cooperation with the freight railroads, but there's just ever demanding and more demands on the commuter railroads, and decarbonization is one of those elements. So I'm going to touch upon that in my presentation, which is right here. Thank you. Accelerating the green transition. So I'm going to touch upon why go green, how to go green, and one concrete project that we're bringing to Quebec City, hydrogen train. So a bit about Alstom in Texas. So if you flew in at DFW, got onto the People Mover, that's ours. We maintain that system. At George Bush International, we have the People Mover as well, where we operate and maintain. If you took TRE, you took some Bombardier legacy bi-levels. If you are at DCTA, DART, Cap Metro, we have signaling systems on the ground. So we are very much a full end-to-end rail provider. So I do have a short video that I really like. It really captures the magnitude of Alstom in the Americas. So I'm just going to present that right here. Is it not? Do I need to point this somewhere? It's not working. Okay. One more, I guess.
Hola, bienvenidos a Alstom América.
Welcome to Alstom Americas.
Bem-vindos a Alstom Américas.
Bienvenue au quart d'Alstom Amérique.
So the video does a really good job of capturing, the full end-to-end mobility experience of what we provide at Alstom. But there's two things I want to pick up that are relevant to the conversation today. The diversity of our teams, right? You can see that this is only the Americas, but we have some, I would say, 60,000 employees across the world. So it fuels innovation, and it's really what's needed when you're thinking about green and new ideas to move away from diesel. So this is the segue to the main part of the presentation. And why go green? Why are we talking about this? Why is there an uptick in interest to decarbonize? Right? There's a few things. So I just want to walk you through that. All right, maybe I'll just tell you to switch the slide because it has some lag. The environment, of course, that's one of the key considerations, right? There's the Paris Agreement, net zero by 2050. There's also multiple diesel bans that are emerging at the national level, at the state level, even at the regional and city level, right? California is a great example of that, where they're essentially trying to ban internal combustion engines by 2035. In Europe, it's really accelerating. We're seeing some of that in the US also accelerating. So that's one of the reasons. And these two elements are, I would say, creating momentum for new clean energies. We're talking about battery investments. We're talking about hydrogen is a big key word right now. There's $7 billion available for hydrogen hubs across the US. So we're going to see that accelerate as we continue to move forward. And it is extremely relevant to the rail industry. Next one, please. So this one's a bit of an eyeball slide, but essentially it's really interesting, and this one was an eye-opener for me. So these are the length of the rail networks across the world in certain key areas. The red boxes you see are the US, Canada, and Mexico, which combine for 250,000 kilometers of rail, freight, and commuter combined, and less than 1% of that is electrified today. So that is a tremendous challenge, but also an opportunity when you're looking to decarbonize. If you look at some other peer countries, like India is going to 68% electrified. You have France that's at 54%. So the challenges are not the same for these specific countries. We're talking about a major difference in terms of where things stand. Next one, please. So sustainability is actually a topic that has emerged on the agenda of the Class 1s and commuter railroads alike. And we talked about the cooperation between the freights and the commuter operators, because essentially commuters run on freight networks. So there is commonality, and I'll get to that when it comes to the infrastructure side. So here you just see some targets, right? This is very much on investors' radars. There's expectations for change in the future moving forward. So that's for the Class 1s. At the commuter level, I would say it's not as science-based. I would say MBTA, that's the first logo, the T, is looking to move to a 45% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And then there's investments. What the key word I would say for the commuters are prototypes. And I was having a dinner conversation last night. Everybody wants to buy one unit, right, to test it, to get the data in the field. But nobody wants to go full green from the get-go, and I get that. But there's, all to say, there is greater momentum, and there's a shift in thinking and in fleet strategies, because if you're thinking of purchasing an asset today, a diesel asset, you're going to be stuck with that asset for the next 30, 40 years, right? So next one, please. So what do you need to go green? So next one. I've been going out in the market, I would say, for the last 2 years, kind of explaining what are the options available in the market. And there's really several elements that need to come together for anything to actually happen, or else it'll be noise. So the first one I'll talk about is an alignment of stakeholders. So that goes from your operators, the maintenance crews, the executive team within, and I'll talk about commuters because commuters are especially relevant when you're thinking about going green. So there's the internal team. There's also, I would say, the communities are involved, the regulators, the funding side, the politicians. Everybody needs to come together and with some leadership decide on a way forward. And this is very difficult to do because there are different competing interests, and this is probably the #1 showstopper in terms of anything to happen in the transition. The other one is, the segue to it is you actually need to plan out the infrastructure because, as I will explain a bit later, it's not about the train. It's about everything that goes around the train, right? You know, where are you going to recharge the trains? Where are you going to get your hydrogen? Where are you going to refuel? Is it green hydrogen? Is it gray hydrogen? So at the end of the day, the train is, you know, a finite part of the equation. It's a real systems approach when you're considering a green transition for your commuter railroads. The third one on the slide was a carrot or stick, and we're seeing a lot more of that, right? Especially on the carrot side. So you're seeing funding for green initiatives emerging at the federal and state level in different jurisdictions. The stick, I would say, is more legislative. So, you know, banning emissions, getting to a certain target by a certain date. So there's a healthy combination. So essentially, what's the case for change? Is there a case for change? If there isn't, more inertia. And the fourth one was, technology readiness. So this is where a company like Alstom comes into play, and we can offer solutions based on, you know, the different portfolio of solutions that we have. And we have in revenue operation solutions in Europe that we're looking to, you know, transition to a regulatory environment that's more suited to North America. So next slide, please. So what do you need when you're going green, right? The right side of this slide, operations, topography, climatography, that's just standard rail language, current fleet, facilities as well. Because in an ideal situation, right, you would get a clean slate. You don't own any locomotives, you don't own any coaches, you don't have any maintenance facilities, and you can just redesign from the get-go. That's not the case, right? You have locomotives that could be 30-year-old, you can have coaches that are 15-year-old, you still want to salvage those assets. So every operation is unique, and that is a daunting challenge for any operator. On the left side, you have more, I would say, your systems or turnkey approach, right? What are you looking, what's your mission profile? How much range do you need, right? And that's all about the mission profile that we're hearing a lot more. You're going to hear that buzzword come up pretty often. So on electrification, do you need intermediate recharge station, electrified islands? So if your train is idling because they're picking up passengers and it's a 10-minute stop, can you recharge for 10 minutes at that specific station because it makes sense? On the hydrogen battery side, I mean, like I alluded to earlier, there's all the language around what's the state and national hydrogen strategy? Are there investments that are coming? Is there a multimodal play with buses, right? So you need to think a little differently and start working with different stakeholders in your community to understand maybe there is a case for an investment because the busing industry or even heavy trucking or the ports are looking to invest in hydrogen. So it's really a combination of different factors. There are 2 points that are not here and that I've heard very often in the last 6 months. It's permitting and real estate. So if you're investing in catenary, if you're investing in a new substation, if you need to build a refueling station beside the wayside, there's a real estate play, there's a permitting play that is very challenging in certain jurisdictions as well. So next one, please. There are solutions that are available right now in the market that are commercialized, that are coming to the US, I would say, but that are already in revenue operations in Europe especially. So this matrix is simple, right? I mean, how many people do you want to move and what's your range? If you have, you want to go far and you don't have that many people to move, then hydrogen is probably your play because it's a low density, long distance solution. If you want to move, I would say a medium amount of people and your range is shorter, then battery is interesting because you don't need to fully electrify your network, and then the total cost of ownership of that specific solution becomes interesting in contrast to electrification. I mean, electrification is still a very green solution, right? It's just that there are different options available in the market to compete with that. And, right, it's really, how does the business model over the life cycle of the infrastructure and the asset compare to a battery solution? So this one, I think, it's very simple, but it's pretty, it explains the message very well. So next one. All right, so some basic 101s, and I don't think I need to educate anybody here, but right, in the US, and I want to talk about commuters specifically because if you look at the range of the options that are available, commuter is the best suited, I would say, for a green transition. So in North America, we have a push-pull model, essentially. I would say 80% of the properties run with a locomotive that are either pushing or hauling some coaches. But you do have some instances where you have multiple units and you're seeing more of those come up. Pardon me. And so I just want to explain that there is a difference and there are different options based on what you're currently doing. So most of the pictures you're seeing, right, of the energy transition is at the train set level. But you could also see that at a locomotive level. And there are certain players in the market that are already very active in commercializing those solutions. So it's not necessarily a train, the locomotive could go green as well. So I just want to make that distinction. But at a multiple unit level where the propulsion is self-contained in the asset, then you really need to consider it at the train set level. So next slide. All right, so what options are available out there? And so there is one that's been running for, I would say, 10 to 15 years, maybe more than that, is a dual mode locomotive. And actually more than that, you have the P32s out in Northeast Corridor, which is essentially, it's a dual mode locomotive. You can either plug up to the catenary when you're on the Northeast Corridor, and then when you're branching off to certain lines, you turn on your diesels and then you're good to go. So that offers a lot of flexibility. It's still something that is out there that, some competitors are still delivering today. So, but just to say that has been around. It offers a lot of flexibility in the market. And there are a lot of options with that solution. Where we're seeing, I would say, the uptick in interest is around batteries. So you're typically talking nominal range of 40 to 60 miles based on how many, on your hills, your basic emission profile that you're trying to accomplish. And when you're braking, you can recover some of that energy. It's fed back into the batteries. So you're talking about 40 to 60 miles as of today. On the hydrogen side, what we're seeing is a nominal range of 600 miles. It's very much for long distance applications, low density, as I mentioned. And electrified makes sense when you're trying to move a lot of people very quickly. And it's still a valid option. It's just becoming more expensive with the real estate and the per mile cost that you would need to invest. And there's a gray bar at the top. I don't want to neglect this. There are also retrofit options, right? You can consider taking an asset and just swapping out a diesel and potentially putting in a battery pack and a recharge solution. So what the message that I'm saying is Alstom is technology agnostic because we've done all of these solutions, and it's really based on what your best, I would say, solution for your specific needs. And so we're not pushing a product approach. Every property is different. That's the message. All right. So I just want to show you some of the solutions in our portfolio, and you get to see them in action. So you can go ahead. right. So actually, Alstom is putting their mouth where the money is because as part of the purchase of Bombardier Transportation 2 years ago, there were a few promises made, but one of them was to set up a dedicated innovation center just outside Montreal where our corporate headquarters are. And the mandate of this center is to really take European technologies and adapt them to the North American regulatory environment. So the first concrete example of the fruits of the labor of this center, just skip 2 slides, please. So we're taking the Coradia iLint, I know it's a mouthful, it's hard to say, which is the first commercialized hydrogen train, and we're bringing that train to North America to showcase essentially what it takes to run a hydrogen train. Because as I said, and I hope it's clear, it's not about the train. You need to develop an ecosystem that goes around the train. So we have a multitude of partners. We have a private railroad. We have a green hydrogen provider. We'll be doing co-sharing operations and maintenance of the asset. And then we're hoping, and we're seeing a lot of interest from academia, from like a multitude of stakeholders that want to come and visit what it takes and what it feels like to run a hydrogen train in North America. So, so this is happening. It's probably getting on the train this week and heading to North America. It'll be a 4-month demonstrator in Charlevoix, which is just outside Quebec City. It's a beautiful area. The railroad just runs across the St. Lawrence River, which is UNESCO protected. It's a fantastic area. So the train's going to be running from June to September. Really the intent is to gather interest in the market, gather interest from the regulators, our customers, suppliers, anybody that has an interest in moving in decarbonization, just to have a conversation, right? And that's what we hope, and hopefully, I mean, some of you in the room can make it as well. So I want to just speak really quick, because I know my time is getting up to the end here, about the train itself. So maybe skip the next slide. Right, full emission technology, it's hydrogen fuel cells. It's produced with green hydrogen from Germany, because those countries, Germany especially, invested tremendously in wind and solar power. And what they realized is that when the peak energy demand lowered at nighttime, they had excess. So what they did is they stored the hydrogen, and that became, the train itself became the consumer of the excess hydrogen, and that's how it started, the reflection. So next slide. Real quick, right, it's based on the Lint. The Lint is a classic diesel multiple unit, so they essentially took an existing platform and switched the diesel packs to the hydrogen fuel cells. I mean, the range I spoke about, I mean, this is just, there's not much else to say. It's a beautiful train, but like I said, I don't really care as much about the train, but I hope you'll come and see it. So next slide. We actually, just an interesting fact, we just broke a distance record a few months ago with our partner LNVG. We spoke about a nominal range of 1,000 kilometers. We got to 1,175. So we had a distance record with our partner, so it was a great milestone. Next one. We get a lot of questions about hydrogen refueling, right? You can invest in a permanent refueling station, but this is just a temporary refueling station for the purposes of our customers. So it's as simple as, and these are things that we've developed for the European context, and this is going to be something similar for the North American context. So next slide. Right, right, it's as simple as plugging the nozzle, turning the knob, and then next one, you just click on the button and you're good to go, right? It's not that more, it's very much like fueling your car at this point. Next one is just a picture of the hydrogen fuel cells that are stacked on the roof, and they're stacked on the roof because, I mean, if there was ever, a leak of gas, it would immediately evaporate to the top. So this is, the safety case is proven. It's been, done more than 250,000 kilometers. This is not a science project. This is a running in-service solution. So next one. So that's that. I just want to conclude, right? Alstom is very, very excited about the energy transition in North America. There's tremendous potential in what we're seeing, right? Just based on the rails that we own in North America. I think it's a challenge, but there's also a great opportunity. We're technology agnostic at this time, so we're not pushing a specific product. I think there's a multitude of solutions available to all our customers' needs. And we hoped for some of you to come and see us this summer, and we'll be sharing knowledge about the train, the ecosystem, the refueling, but also sharing our thoughts on the market and where we would like to go in the future. So thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure.
Patrick, we have about 5 minutes, so if there's any questions, please raise your hand, and either Josh or Mark will come around with a microphone so everyone can hear it. By the way, all of these presentations are being videoed, and they will be up on the Texas Rail Advocates website.
Good morning, Patrick. Thank you for that informative presentation. I guess just a statement of fact, first of all, I commend Alstom. You know, in the eyes of a car builder, North America is only representative of 6% of the total market worldwide for vehicles. So you're taking an approach of looking at an opportunity to introduce green initiatives, and North America, therefore, based on the track mileage available, offers such an opportunity. The question I had, and it's very informative what you're doing with hydrogen, has any work been done, because you mentioned taking advantage of multimodal situations, has any work been done by Alstom with respect to using compressed natural gas on locomotives? Because that's been a push that I see in Asia.
I have not seen that as prevalent in the portfolio right now of solutions that are being adopted. I know it's been an uptick. There's also internal, like a hydrogen internal combustion engine that's all the rage right now. Those initiatives are being led by our European group right now because we're very active in the freight space as well over there. I wish I could provide more to that, John, but at this point I'm essentially focused on the solutions that are available in the commuter market. But it's something that we need to monitor, right? We can't discard anything at this point. So have you seen? I mean, I know in Asia, maybe you want to share.
No, I just see that there's been an uptick in Asia using CNGs for locomotives in areas, but very informative. I'm very excited to see what's coming down the road with Alstom.
Great, thanks.
Patrick.
Hi.
How are the different technologies impacted by weather, particularly cold weather?
Yeah.
Is there a difference? And at my agency, the Surface Transportation Board, we heard a lot from the railroads this year about, diesel locomotives having problems, when the weather is 20 below zero, and it's,
Yep.
And in fact, an interesting historical tidbit, the Milwaukee Road, when it was running across Montana 120 years ago, or 100 years ago, they actually converted to electricity because it was easier to get electric locomotives over the Rockies when it was 40 below zero than it was to get a steam engine over the Rockies. And they had 400 miles of electrified rail, which when diesel came along, they tore up, which is too bad. So could you comment on that?
No, I mean, we hear that a lot. I mean, it's very much true. That's the analogy of the car industry, right? I mean, your range decreases as cold weather emerges. On the hydrogen side, the iLint is currently rated to minus 25 centigrade. Okay, so that is actually quite interesting. We've gotten a lot of interest from, I would say, the Canadian government to explore, deep freeze hydrogen technologies because the winterization packages would need to be completely different. So there's still, like I said, we're still very much in the early stages. I'm not saying that all these technologies are applicable to any given environment. There's really a combination of factors that need to come together for the use case to work. But we're going to see continued investments in battery and hydrogen, and it's only going to get better with time. So at this point, right, the factual element that I can share is that it's rated minus 25 centigrade, so which covers most, or if not, I would say a good proportion of the North American geography. So. That's it? Thank you very much.